evening. Welcome to Living Arts. I'm your host, Jackie Suarez. Thank you for tuning in. We have a really exciting show this evening. This is our first voyage, I guess, into the culinary arts. We're going to be exploring wine tasting, wine pairings, discuss a little bit of cheese, and here to take us through that is Stephen Zwick of Dillon's Wine Cellar. Stephen, thank you for coming to the show.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I've been really looking forward to this.
Likewise.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get started, I guess, in the wine business, or what's your history with wine?
I was in finance and banking for about 12, 13 years, and my wife and I have always been into everyday wines, and that's kind of what we concentrate on. We were just tired of going to, regular wine stores and liquor stores where you walk in and you're intimidated by seeing geographical signs all over the place, and, Germany, France, all these things. And most people, are just looking to find a great everyday kind of bottle to drink, with their pasta or their typical meal at home. And they don't know that, France is known for their Burgundies and Bordeaux and so forth and so on. So we tried to create, a very non-intimidating environment and just try to make it as simple as possible to find a great bottle of wine. So,
well, I think at the end of the day, that's what most people are looking for.
Correct.
I think a lot, there's I hate to use the word mysticism, but let's say for the wine novice, why don't you explain to us just a little bit about the history of wine?
Well, wine has been around for over 5,000 years, and I think they actually date back winemaking back to like 4,500 BC back in Greece, and I think that's where they say it actually originated from, was in the Greece region to a certain extent. But obviously wine is just fermented grape juice. Right. And the reason why they use grapes is because grapes is the only fruit that has the most desirable flavors, number one, and also has good liquid content, good acidity, and good sugar to be able to ferment and turn into wine. So that's why they obviously use grapes. A lot of people always ask that question, do they make wine out of anything else? And they do, actually. There's like blueberry wine and things of that nature out there, but that's the main reason why they use grapes.
Right, there was a story that I'd heard once, just that I guess it was the whole thing with wine happened quite by accident. Grapes had gone bad, and I guess the skin had eroded off of it, or there was a liquid that was produced, and it contained alcohol.
Correct.
Now, I'm a little unfamiliar with that process exactly. So, what exactly turns the grapes into wine? I mean, into something alcohol.
Sure.
Into alcohol.
Well, the biggest thing is the whole fermentation process, and that's where the natural sugar in the grapes turn into alcohol and turns it from grape juice to wine.
So give it enough time, any fruit will do that?
Well, you need some other, ingredients and other processes to a certain extent. Not to get too technical, but obviously there's a couple of different wine making processes. Most is obviously for white wine and to keep a general red wine. So typically, obviously, they harvest the grapes from the vineyard, which usually the winemaker decides when they're going to pick the grapes to harvest. Usually it's whenever he feels the grapes are the ripest, number one, and they also have a good balance of acidity and sugar. For good flavors of the wine. And then they go through, this rigorous process. They go into like this big machine that kind of crushes the grapes and gets some of the juices flowing. And then after that, especially in the white wine process, after it gets done crushed, then they kind of like press all the grapes and squeeze all the juices out, so they could separate the skins and the juices. And then it goes through the fermentation process.
Okay. So you'd mentioned that there was slightly a different process for the whites and the reds.
Correct.
So tell us a little bit about the process for the reds.
Reds, it's a similar process, but what happens is instead of automatically going from pressing the grapes to fermentation, what they do is they actually harvest the grapes, and then what they do is they actually ferment the grapes first with the skins. So when they ferment the grapes with the skins, that's where the pigment comes from for the color of the red wine. And they also picks up the tannin structure of the wine and a lot of the flavor profiles just by fermenting it with the skins and things of that nature. So that's obviously the main difference between red and white wines. You don't get too many white ones with a lot of tannins and that astringency because
the skins have been separated from it.
Correct. And both things. If you have a red grape that, like a Cabernet Franc grape, it's got a red skin, but once you squeeze it, it's a clear liquid that comes out of it.
Right.
It gets all that color from fermenting, and there's a maceration process where it kind of just comes together with the juices just fermenting with all the skins and seeds and pulp of the grapes.
Okay, so now from that process of, I guess, from the vine to the process you just mentioned, the whole bottling period that goes on, is there a period where they're going to be just holding on to the wine, let's say in oak barrels or steel canisters? Because I know there's there's a difference between the two. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's all up to the winemaker's preference and what type of wine he's going for and what flavor profile he's going for. So usually, again, with white wine process, once it goes through the whole fermentation process, then if you say it's a Chardonnay in California and he wants to age it in oak for a while, once it's done fermenting, which is usually done in these huge steel vessels or vats to a certain extent. Once it's done with that, then they'll put it in oak barrels just to get a little more flavor, a little more body, especially with Chardonnay, and then they'll bottle it. You know, in some Chardonnays, it depends what you're paying for. If you're getting a $10 bottle of Chardonnay or a $15 bottle of Chardonnay, you know, it's going to be aged in oak if it is, you know, in bigger oak barrels, you know, because of cost. To a certain extent, but some higher-end Chardonnays, they may be in small oak barrels to get more contact with the oak and more dense flavors and more oaky taste. So,
okay, that's very interesting. You know, I've always been quite fascinated with the whole process of making wine.
Sure.
So let's say someone knows absolutely nothing about wine. You know, let's use me for example.
Okay.
What would be some of the major groups of wines that someone like myself would be looking for if I were just going into a wine shop? You know, nothing too fancy.
Sure.
Explain a couple of the groups that I should be looking for.
Well, most popular on the white wine side is obviously Chardonnays. You also have your Pinot Grigios, which are going to be a little lighter and a little crisper with good acidity to it. And then you have Sauvignon Blancs. Obviously, everybody's raving about New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs, very citrusy, very acidic. You know, and the acidity in wine, especially in whites, is what makes it a good food wine. Because that pairs perfectly with fatty meals and things of that nature. But also on a nice hot summer day, you're sitting on the porch. What do you want? You know, you're not going to drink some heavy red zin, which some people do, but other people want a nice crisp white. You know,
right. It does seem to go a little better with the warmer weather or lighter fare.
Absolutely, it's definitely a seasonal thing, and some people, you know, are set in their ways. They'll pick up the same bottle of wine or they'll drink the same type of varietal. You know, obviously Cabernet Sauvignons are big on the red side. Pinot Noirs are huge. We're Sideways, the movie, obviously, not to mention it, but
yeah, exactly.
You know, just in general, and then Merlots are definitely making a nice comeback as well. So, you know, those are some of the mainstream kind of varietals that most people are looking for. And one up-and-coming area of wine, and that's what I try to recommend a lot, especially during the summertime, are rosés.
Really?
Yeah, rosés are perfect summer wine, but people always have that image of their grandmother around the holidays pouring white Zinfandel in a cup and throwing ice cubes in it. You know, because it's a sweet wine.
Yeah, the one that comes out of the box.
Exactly. But there's some great rosés, great dry rosés that are perfect for summertime or even a perfect meal. So.
Well, that's very interesting. I would think, you know, just from, you know, my limited knowledge of wines, you know, the Cabernet Sauvignon seemed always a little lighter to me than, let's say, the Merlot or the Pinot Noir, which was just a little heavier.
Correct.
Do you find that with to be true?
Yeah, absolutely, and there's definitely a guide. And you know, on red grapes, obviously Pinot Noirs are one of the lightest varietals that you're going to find. Then going into maybe Merlots and Cabernets, and up until the Zinfandels and things of that nature. And then once you go into the old world style, old world meaning, you know, French wines, Italian wines, Spanish wines.
Right, Rioja.
Correct. Riojas are phenomenal wines. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, and they're great wines that are very similar to, you know, Cabernet Sauvignons. You know, I always try to turn people onto different varietals they won't necessarily pick up one day. So if I see somebody that always happens to love Cabernet Sauvignons, Riojas are perfect segue for them to try something new within the same kind of flavor profile to a certain extent.
Absolutely. So I'd like to talk a little bit, you know, we've got Thanksgiving coming up. Absolutely. And so many other holidays. What would you recommend, or what are some of the nice holiday pairings for some of the traditional things that someone would eat on Thanksgiving? Let's say for just turkey, ham, or something along those lines. What do you find are good things that someone can pick up from the store and use to bring to a party?
Well, obviously you want something that's going to go well with the dish, but most people are entertaining and they just want a great sipping wine that's good with food and without food. A traditional wine around obviously the fall time as well as for Thanksgiving is Beaujolais. So Beaujolais actually is the lightest, made with the lightest red grape varietal called a Gamay grape. And Beaujolais is obviously from Burgundy, France. And they tend to be the perfect fall wine. Because they're very light, very fruit forward and fruity. And especially with Thanksgiving, it's great because with turkey, it's so dry and it's such a lean meat that you want a little moisture and a little fruitness to go with the turkey. So it definitely goes well with it, especially a little cranberry sauce and all that other good stuff. So.
All right, so you heard that. Beaujolais, if you want to get something nice for your turkey dinner. So let's say you were having a ham. What would be something that you'd be having with that?
Ham is obviously a little more heartier to a certain extent than turkey. Pinot Noir would be awesome with it. Again, on the lighter side, because when you're talking about like pairing foods and wines and stuff, you don't want either or to kind of compete with each other, overpower one or another. So with ham, definitely a Pinot Noir would go well with it. Even a Merlot, or you don't want to get too heavy as far as body-wise. Maybe a nice light Cabernet. Something that may not have been aged in oak for too long or so.
So I guess one of the earmarks or something that you could suggest to someone if they were trying to pair a wine with a certain type of food, or let's say they were invited to a party, what would be some of the guidelines for that? Besides, the trying not to overpower, or let's say you didn't even know what the person was serving and you were going to an event.
Sure.
What would be something that would be a safe pick?
Again, I hate to be redundant, but Pinot Noirs are just great entertaining wines.
Really?
Absolutely, especially on the red side. And then
should you always lean towards the red more than the white if you were going to an event? I always thought the exact opposite, kind of, because a lot of people won't want you to bring red wine to their house.
Well,
a lot of people remember that. I don't know if you've. I have this image in my mind of Sex and the City during this one episode when. I think it's Tatum O'Neal's house. Okay. And Carrie goes to visit her, and she spills red wine on her white carpet.
Ah, okay.
So that's always kind of, even prior to that, it's always kind of a sticky thing to do that.
Sure.
Or would you bring one of each? Would you bring a nice red and a nice white?
Yeah, you could definitely do that. The biggest thing is you want something that is a great sipping, entertaining wine. And I know we have some lines of wine here that we're going to discuss later, but a great starter is, if you want, is a nice sparkling wine. Especially around the holidays, just to start off, maybe a nice inexpensive Prosecco or a Cava from Spain. Okay. You don't have to go crazy and spend $50 on a bottle of champagne, but you can get a very decent Prosecco or Cava, for under $15.
Okay, so if you weren't really sure of what the person was serving, you would recommend a Prosecco.
Yeah,
because that would be kind of like maybe an after dinner thing or prior to it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And then even on, you could do the sparkling with the Proseccos or Cavas, or if you feel safer doing a white wine, most people kind of stick with the mainstream varietals of a Chardonnay or a Sauvignon Blanc or Pinot Grigio, because again, most of those are going to be everyday kind of drinking wines that are great with food or without food. To me, there's only very few wines out there that are horrible on their own.
And never mind a wine I didn't like.
Exactly.
So let's say you're the one that's entertaining and you're having some people over, and you wanted to just kind of cover your bases. You're not sure, what anyone's leanings are, or what their tendency. They have a tendency to drink white or red. Sure. What's a nice array of wines that you could get, and what are some of the percentage? Like, if you have 6 people coming over, you can count on them drinking 2 to 3 glasses each. What does that all come down to? Like being practical.
Well, as a host and planning for it, usually every bottle of wine you get 4 glasses of wine. So that's always a good guide to go on, and it all depends on how you're pouring. Nowadays they sell the glasses that fit a whole bottle of wine. I don't think anybody's walking around with one of those. Has them at their house. I think
those are more for just effect. I don't think anyone.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, if you notice when you're in a restaurant, it's like Just
Exactly.
you're getting about this much wine.
Exactly, but as a rule of thumb, 4 glasses of wine per bottle. As me as a host, every time we entertain, which we entertain a lot at our house, I always
Shall I give you my phone number?
absolutely, absolutely, more the merrier. But I always keep a varietal of different wines. So again, as a starter, I always have a bottle of Prosecco on hand, and then I'll have a couple whites, mainstream, maybe a Pinot Grigio or a Chardonnay. And then on the reds, something lighter, and then something maybe a little fuller body like a Cabernet Sauvignon, or maybe even a nice Syrah.
Ah, the Syrah.
Yes.
I've always been kind of a little bit fascinated about that, but there was something that I wanted to get to.
Sure.
I would like our audience to experience or to have an idea about how to do a traditional wine tasting.
Okay.
And the steps involved in that. So if you could take it away with that.
Sure. With wine tasting, what you're basically going to use is your 4 major senses. You're going to use sight. You're also going to use smell, taste, and also touch. So with the sight, you're going to obviously look at the wine. Most people tend to tilt it on the side, and you have a white background that you can look through.
Okay.
And the reason why you have a white background is you can see the clarity of the wine when you're tilting it. And the reason why you're looking at the clarity of the wine is you want to see if it's cloudy, number one. And if it's cloudy, it may indicate that it's a somewhat of... Oh, good. If it's cloudy, it may indicate that maybe the wine wasn't filtered or unfined, and it's going to have a little, I don't want to say particles, but it's going to have a little more complexity of flavors to a certain extent. But if it's an inexpensive bottle of wine and it's a little cloudy, sometimes it may indicate that it's a bad wine, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing you'd be taking a look at would be
Clarity.
the clarity of it.
Correct. And then you could also look at the color. You could tell a lot by the wine just
So
by
let's
looking at the
say
color.
That would be more for a white. So let's say it's red. What are you looking for? Any type of sediment or cork that's floating around in there or anything like that?
Correct. Same thing, clarity, and then you're also looking at the color. With reds, if it's a more of like an inky kind of color, like a purple color or a dark red color, usually that indicates that it's a younger wine. And then if it's more of like a brownish brick orange kind of, usually that indicates that it's more of a mature, older kind of wine.
Okay.
And same thing with whites. If it has a little body to it, it may be aged in oak or it may be more of a mature white. And then usually it's going to be lighter. It'd be a little crisper and a lighter white.
Okay, so I guess traditionally the darker it is, the older it is. For the most part.
No, that's where the color changes because over time the pigments in the wine actually break down. So that's why if it's like an inky purple kind of color, it's more of a younger wine because it hasn't had time for those pigments of the grape juice where it picked up from the grape skins and all that other stuff. It hasn't had time to break down. So that's where the older wines always have that little brick orange brownish kind of color to it. And that always indicates, you'll see that 5 years into it or longer, obviously, with the wines.
Now, is there something that if you were looking at it and you saw, what would be something that you'd say, this is not a good wine to drink? Or is there something, there's something obviously wrong with this wine?
Sure.
Just on sight, what would be one of the things you'd look at?
Well, definitely with whites if it is really cloudy. And you have to be careful if it's a chilled white, it may have that little film around the glass from the condensation. But if it's really cloudy, especially on the white side, you want to investigate a little more, and that's when you'll go to the next step of your smell, your sense of smell.
Okay.
And sense of smell is huge. That's probably the most important sense to use when you're tasting wines, because if you think about it, I know we have an image of a tongue.
Yes, we have the tongue that you sent us,
Yes.
and basically it is a map of taste receptors.
Correct.
Right.
And when you're tasting something, and it has nothing to do just with wine, with food or anything, with the taste that you're tasting, your mouth is only tasting the bitter portion, salty, sour, and sweet. So there's 4 areas that you're only going to be tasting on your tongue. So the bitter part is on the back of your tongue, the sour part is on the back sides of your tongue, and then the salty is the front sides of your tongue, and then the sweet is the tip of your tongue. So even if you have like a, say like a Moscato, a popular dessert wine, if you were to just stick your tongue, the tip of your tongue inside the wine, you'll notice it instantaneous, that sweetness. It'll pick it up.
The fruitiness of it.
Absolutely. But the remainder that you're tasting from is the smell. Not to get so technical, but everybody has two of these small tissue pieces above and behind their nose, and they're called the olfactory epithelium. I'm probably mispronouncing it. But that's the organism or organ that actually is your sense of smell. So even when you're tasting the wine, I don't know if you've ever witnessed somebody, seriously tasting a wine, they actually breathe air through their mouth and through the wine. Okay. And the reason why they do that is because it forces all the aromas of the wine to go to the back of your throat and up your nasal cavity, and you get a more intense kind of flavor and aromas of the wine as you're tasting it.
So now that takes us to taste, and I think this would be an excellent time for us to taste something.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Why don't you describe the wine that you're going to be pouring, and
Sure.
We'll go ahead and try that.
Well, the first one we're going to taste is Kingsridge Riesling, and this would be great. I know we were on the theme of the Thanksgiving.
Yes.
So this is a nice Riesling from Willamette Valley, Oregon. Small production. It's a great Riesling because it's not overly powered with sweetness, and that's one reason why a lot of people stay away from Rieslings, is they think that it's going to be a little too sweet. There you go.
Okay.
So this is the best of both worlds because it's got a semi-sweetness to it, but it also has a really crispness of acidity to it. So when you taste it, you're going to get a bit of sweetness, almost like a German Riesling, and then on the back end, you're going to get that crisp finish, which kind of wipes away all that sweetness. Okay. So this would be perfect, Thanksgiving meals would be perfect with sweet potatoes or cranberries or something of that nature, because of that sweetness would definitely bring out the sweetness in some of the foods.
Okay, so then I guess we're at a wine tasting here. We're gonna shake this up a little bit.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so we're gonna do a little number like this.
So you swirl it just a couple times. You really stick your nose in there and take a deep breath. That way you can get a good sniff out of it and try to pick what you can out of it. And I always tell people that the hardest thing everybody says is, how do you pick out all these things? Everybody reads wine labels and it's like honeysuckle or
Well,
pears,
that's for the more, I guess,
it is for
experienced wine taster, because then you'd be able to pick apart, well, this is this type of fruit or this type of
correct
oakiness to it and so forth.
But I always tell people to look at those tasting notes and then look at it and taste the wine again. And sometimes you're going to be able to pick it up. Right. And then next time you go through it, you may be able to pick it up on your own without looking at the notes. Right. And it's a great way to learn your palate as well. Right. So this Riesling is, like I said, a great Riesling, and it has a lot of white fruit flavors to it and aromas. Maybe like a little pear, peach,
yes,
definitely an apple.
Get that.
Yeah. So it's a really nice wine, and when you're tasting, you always want to kind of swirl it, and what that does is basically increase the surface area of the wine, and more of the aromas kind of jump out of the glass. Right. And I know it looks silly if you're entertaining. You don't want to have your nose all in the glass and making large noises and stuff. But
I think when you're first, let's say it's a new bottle of wine or something, this is something you want to do so you can get a real sense of what it tastes like.
Correct. So once you're done smelling it, you pick what you can, try to record it. And then you taste it. You put a small amount in your mouth, try to swish it around so it touches all the senses and
all
taste
the various
buds.
parts, right?
Absolutely. They say chewing motion. You don't have to go crazy. Just taste it. Keep it simple.
Well, here goes nothing.
There you go. What do you think?
It's good. It's a little on the dry side.
Do you get the sweetness in the beginning, or?
Absolutely, but it kind of finishes with something very dry. It's almost like a, I want to say like a pear, almost.
There you go. And that's actually one of the tasting notes. It definitely has that white tree fruit, kind of like pears and things of that nature.
Right, like a sweet fruit that you were, having.
Correct. But and that's that dry finish, that crisp acidity that kind of wipes away all that sweetness. And I still taste it, so it kind of lingers in the mouth a little.
Yeah, absolutely, but it's not anything harsh or anything too dry. It was quite nice.
Correct.
And this is not a German Riesling; it's an American.
Yep, Willamette Valley, Oregon. They're making some phenomenal Rieslings there.
They are doing some great stuff in Oregon.
Yep, everybody thinks of Oregon as obviously Pinot Noirs, which we happen to have one tonight. But they're making great Rieslings. They're making great Pinot Gris.
Awesome!
And that's always a funny thing with Pinot Gris. People are like, what's a Pinot Gris?
So here's what I'd like to do, because time is slipping away from us. We're going to try a nice red. And what I did was I brought some of these cheeses just as an aside note. Let's say you're entertaining, what have you. You want to have a couple of, let's say, a Beaujolais or something like that. A nice hearty Italian cheese, like a Piave Vecchio. Even with the white, if you'd like to have a nice aged Gouda, goes really well, and it's works awesome with the wine tastings, I think.
Okay. Do you want to move on to a red?
Yeah, let's
maybe
do that.
We have a nice Beaujolais Village, but I'd actually recommend the Pinot Noir because it has a little more tannins to
terrific. Did you want to try a little piece of this?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, we'll try the Piave.
The reason why I chose the Pinot Noir, just because it has a little more tannin structure to it. This is your glass.
Thank you. And we have a little dried sausage. We have a Piave, and this is from the mountainous region of Italy. It's quite good cheese, and, and it's got a little nuttiness to it, so go ahead, try that.
Cool. Would you like a piece as well? Or?
No, I'm good, thank you. So we're going to do this again here, just to make sure that we have a sense of a traditional wine tasting.
So you get the smell, you can see the look.
Oh, yep,
Not
we forgot to do that the first time.
Definitely hold it up. It's not cloudy, it's got a lot of nice
it has a nice hue towards the edges of it.
Correct.
So what would that be indicative of?
Again, a younger wine, and also not so much concentration from when they press the grapes. A lot of people kind of press the grapes as much as they can to get so much out of it to obviously make more wine.
Sure.
But it also cuts down the quality, and that shows that this is a good quality Pinot Noir.
So this is also wine by Joe.
Yep.
And this is all from Oregon.
Correct.
As well.
It's Willamette Valley, Oregon. When you think of Pinot Noir, you think of Burgundy, France, or Oregon. So.
There is something a little. Wow, that finished really well.
It has good tannins to it, and it definitely goes well with the cheese, because the cheese is a hearty cheese, so the tannins will cut through it. So
this is just a nice compliment to any wine tasting or any event that you're having in your home.
Okay.
Stephen, believe it or not, we've I've had a wonderful time speaking with you.
Thank you.
It looks like we're getting down to the wire here, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to say a little something about your place, Dylan's, and the website where anybody can find out some information about you.
Sure, it's dylanswinecellar.com, and we're just a very community-driven store. We like giving back to the community. I've been born and raised in Peekskill, and some people call it as a cheers kind of place. I know everybody's name. They come in and we just have a good time. So.
Right, and you've been also educating people about wines and doing a lot of great stuff. So we appreciate that. I appreciate you coming down to see us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Just quickly, let's say, pick a wine that you think is up and coming that somebody could have. What would be the next big thing, or the next big thing in wine that you could tell someone about?
I love Spanish wines. I think they're the most underrated wines, and one of the up-and-coming kind of wine regions in Spain is Priorat, which they produce some high-end stuff, but there's some great everyday, 12 to maybe $15, $16, $17. And those are just amazing, complex wines for the price.
Oh, that's awesome. So, thank you all for joining us. I hope this has been entertaining, informative. We had a great time doing it. I'd like you all to come and see us at Living Arts in Westchester. It's our website. We have a YouTube channel, also Living Arts in Westchester, and you can see old episodes of Living Arts. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions or anything, please contact me via email, livingarts.westchester@gmail.com. Thank you. Peace. We'll see you soon, and happy Thanksgiving.